if you can hire from anywhere in the world, you can hire rock stars that just happen to live in Ireland, for example. But what you can't do is solve for time zone and distance. So how is the rock star that lives in Ireland going to collaborate in the way that I just described with the rock star that lives in Bogota, Colombia, and somebody else who lives in Seattle and somebody else who lives in San Francisco? They can't. So the sum of the parts doesn't become greater than the whole in that scenario.
Hello, and welcome to Office Libations Unwrapped. I'm your host, Claude Burns, and I'm here today with Orla Clifford, the VP of Operations at Sigma Computing. Hey, Orla, how are you doing today?
Hi, how are you, Claude? Nice to be here.
I'm doing well. Where are you coming on this podcast from? I hear it somewhere far away.
Yeah, no, you've caught me in an unusual place for me. I am at home in Ireland, in my parents' house this week. But yeah, happy to be joining you. Generally, I would normally be in San Francisco, but today I'm in Ireland.
I'm a little jealous if I'm going to be honest with you.
Well, it is the first day that it hasn't rained since I got here last week. So, temper that jealousy.
Well, we have the opposite problem in the Bay Area, right? We don't get enough rain. So maybe bring some back with you. Hey, Orla, before we dive into your role and your company, we kind of start with kind of a quick hit segment to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm just going to ask you some questions and just respond with first thing that comes to the top of your mind. All right,
Sure.
Ready? All right, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay, do you have a favorite brand?
I'm very consistent to Starbucks. I started drinking that a long time ago and I stick with it.
Okay, do you have like a favorite, like a roast that's like, that's the one I get, or like?
It's always the same thing. Grande Americano, black, no milk, no sugar.
Do you go to the same Starbucks and they know your order, so you kind of walk in,
They
or
do.
your online app?
Yeah.
No. They're great
44
at
in
that.
Montgomery. Every morning I'm in there and Marcello said hi and hands me my 2 coffees and I bring it to the office. So yeah, very consistent in my coffee order.
Yeah, that's such great customer service. All right, favorite go-to snack or drink for work?
Snack is easy. It's cheese. I've often said that as long as cheese exists, I would survive. Because that's my go-to snack every day. Sometimes even my go-to lunch every day. In terms of water, sparkling water, coffee, and cheese. That's it. That's my diet right there.
I think that makes it easy, right? You're retired. Money's no object. Where do you live?
Oh, that's tough. A little village in the south of France that I'm not going to name because then you'll know where it is, and so you'll want to go there
Then
too.
it will no longer be a little village.
Exactly.
You got to hide those like hidden gems, like just for yourself sometimes. What's your go-to fun fact? Like if you do an icebreaker and you're introducing yourself, what's the fun fact you lead with?
My best fun fact is that I once drove Nelson Mandela around Dublin while he was performing at the opening of the Special Olympics, and I delivered him to Bono from U2.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of
Good,
them.
right?
That's pretty insane. What's the last book you've read?
Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin, which is it's a novel, bit about tech, bit about futurism. Very interesting.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, highly recommend. Put it on your list.
Okay, will do. I actually just asked a bunch of people about what audiobooks I should download, so I'll have to
It's
add
a
that
good one.
What is your favorite historical figure? They can be dead or alive.
I think for me, that's going to be Marie Curie. Yeah, Marie Curie, for sure. She overcame such odds. When you think about it, that she ended up winning the Nobel Prize. She had to overcome such odds to even get recognized for the work that she did, and then went on to win the Nobel Prize. So that's how brilliant she was.
Yeah.
Which, we don't necessarily give credit for across the board. But yeah, Marie Curie, beyond a shadow of a doubt.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that her notebook still is radioactive because it had so much from her research, and it's somewhere. That could be like a fake thing, and I got to like fact check
Right.
that. But I think I saw that on the internet somewhere, but it wouldn't surprise me. Let's sort of get into it. Can you tell us a little bit about your company, Sigma Computing, and what it does?
Sure, absolutely. So, Sigma Computing is an analytics platform for your cloud data. So, effectively, if you are a company that is storing data in a cloud data warehouse, such as Snowflake or Databricks or Redshift or BigQuery, you need a visualization layer to be able to bring that data to life, to really to be able to talk to your data. Sigma is that visualization layer that allows you to talk to your data, build your analytics up from the ground up or from the top down, whichever you prefer, using a spreadsheet-like interface as the base. So it feels and looks a lot like what you would be used to in Excel, which is a little different than everything else that's on the from a competition perspective.
Got it. And who's kind of the main user for the product? Is it like sales team, marketing teams, engineering teams?
It is any team. So we are very focused on enabling the business user, and by the business user we mean people like you as the CEO of your company, or me as the VP of operations of my company, to be able to interact and make decisions based on the data that we have. So, for example, we at Sigma, of course, use Sigma for everything from analyzing what is our most popular snack in the office, all the way up to, what is our revenue waterfall for the next, 18 months. So across the board, we use Sigma for everything that evolves around our data. And we expect every employee in our company to use it, and they all do, because we deliberately made it as simple as possible to interact with your data using the platform.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of have to use your own tool, right? So if you're not using the own thing that you're building for other people, you kind of have to question why that is. I'm
Exactly right.
Because you have so many users internally. I mean, how much of product is really driven like internally, with people being like, I have a good idea on how we should use this, and then it sort of provides value to existing clients.
A huge amount. We live by a series of operating principles in Sigma, and the number one operating principle is we are data driven, and the number two operating principles is we are our own customer. So, as I said earlier on, we expect everybody in the company to use it to use Sigma as their platform to try and understand their data and make good decisions, or make arguments as to why they expect to make a decision. So, as you can imagine, within that context where everybody is freely using the product, there's a lot of feedback that comes up, and a lot of feature requests or enhancements or UX enhancements that come back to our product team and our engineering team from our sales reps, or from me, or for somebody in the finance organization. So we very much rely on that internal feedback to both test out the product, because we bring features to market all the time,
Yep.
and also to provide that feedback back into customers. And as a result of that, some of that feedback, turns into whole new directions from the product. There's some stuff that we're working on right now around creating the idea of a data application that really came from internal feedback. So it's enlivening, exciting, and yeah, pretty cool what we've been able to do.
That's amazing. VP of operations, that can mean so many different things. So what's it mean for you? Like, can you tell us a little bit about your role and kind of how you play into that?
Sure. Yeah, you're right. VP of operations is a very broad church role that kind of means everything and nothing all at once. So, yeah, I appreciate the question. Well, I've been with Sigma Computing for 4 years. So I joined Sigma in June of 2020, when we were just about 50 employees around that time. And since then, I've pretty much run the all of the back office functions. So you could finance, IT, legal, HR, the data team, or have at various stages in my tenure with Sigma have rolled into me, or those teams have been part of my team. Today, I'm very focused on two areas of the business. I'm running our data platform team, so looking at how we use Sigma across Sigma, building out all the
Mm.
business operations and analytics. Also run the people operations team, which includes our workplace experience team, which I think some of what we're going to talk about today, which is also a lot of fun. And think about things like real estate and how we create an excellent experience for our employees. All of that's still part of my remit.
Yeah, that's pretty broad.
It
That's
is.
a lot of things. Keep you busy, for sure. When you think about those like employee experiences and sort of how you're running people ops, how does Sigma sort of approach their employee experience and how to deliver kind of best in class experience for their employees and ultimately, hopefully, to build a great company?
Yeah, great question. To answer it, I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes of context, and then we'll talk specifically about the programs that we've implemented. So at Sigma, we have long believed in the value of the in-office experience. So as I mentioned, I joined the company in June of 2020, along with our CEO, Mike Palmer. So we joined when the world was on complete lockdown. Joined the company when it was, nobody was in the office, um, and that was tough because we were onboarding, trying to learn about this product that we were trying to learn about the team, trying to understand and get a sense of what the go-to-market was, and everybody was dispersed. So it was a tough experience. It was a tough introduction. Very early on, or as early on in our tenure as we could, if you remember back to 2020,
Mhm.
we started to try and get together in as safe a way as possible in the office. Never forget, we were like spaced out in this huge office, basically shouting at each other in the first couple of meetings that we had together. But we recognized in those early discussions just how much more value we were getting out of the 2 or 3 hours that we were spending together than we did on the 15 hours of Zoom calls that we were having in between those in-person meetings. So we decided very early on that it was important for us, given the stage of company that we were at, and wanting and knowing that we had to evolve and innovate and continue to evolve and innovate as we look to grow, that we needed to be together as much as possible. So we established and went back to the office really in mid 2021, and have been consistent to that ever since. So our expectation is, while we are hybrid, we do expect our team to be in the office 4 days a week, in either San Francisco or New York. We're pretty clear about that because we don't want anyone that's joining the company to be uncertain as to both our expectation and why we have that expectation. We really believe, in fact, we say we know that having our team be together has created an environment in which we've continued to grow 300% year over year, and that we've acquired 1,000 new customers over the period of time that we've been with the company, developed 2 new product lines. We know that part of the reason that we've had that success is because we have people together. We can talk about that in a moment. But to answer your specific question, in that context, we think having an excellent employee experience is critical. We expect people to come to the office, and we expect them to be there 4 days a week. So it's incumbent upon us in that context to offer as excellent an employee experience as we can, as engaging an employee experience as we can. So we put a lot of thought and, frankly, investment into that. Everything from, let's make sure that we're supporting people with commuter stipends, all the way through to, let's think about what the experience is like when they're in the office, when people are in the office. So how good is our snack program? How do we create opportunities for people to meet with each other? We have a dog-friendly office, so we have a dog walker that comes and takes the dogs to the park in both of our offices in New York and San Francisco. But we're very deliberate about the investment that we make there, because, again, we expect people to be there, and we want them to want to, not be there because they have to. Does that make sense?
Right. Oh, absolutely. I want to kind of talk about the dog walker a little bit. We work with a lot of different offices, so you hear about a lot of different perks and things that companies do are different. Do you know how that sort of came about to, not just be a dog friendly office, but to actually have dog walkers come and take the pups out for an afternoon stroll?
I would love to take credit for it, but I cannot. So our CEO, Mike Palmer, that was his idea. We were very keen. We knew our employees, that this is, again, back in 2021, we knew
Yeah.
our employees were invested in coming back into the office, but a lot of them had either acquired dogs during the
Mhm.
pandemic, or their dogs had become used to them being at home. And so one of the things that we heard a lot in those early days was, like, I'm concerned about leaving my dog at home. And so we were like, okay, we're going to be a dog friendly office. But then the next obvious question is, yeah, but won't it be disruptive? And, like, how am I going to make sure that the dog gets out for a walk and gets some exercise? And so we were thinking that through. And then Mike was like, well, why don't we just invest in having a dog walker come once a day? And I was like, yeah, that's kind of the simple, easy, genius answer here. So we did that. We invested in having a dog walker come by. They take the dogs to a local park. The dogs have fun, they play. So yeah, it's an amazing perk and run by an amazing company. So I'll give a shout out to Who Let the Dogs Out in San Francisco, who are the company that come
that's a
and
great name.
that take them. It is, right? It is, yeah. So the team there do an amazing job. Come take the dogs, bring them to the park. The dogs have great fun. They come back, they're exhausted when they do come back. So they're prepared to sit quietly for the rest of the day. So it means that we can be productive while knowing that our dogs are well cared for and that they're having fun. So I would probably say
Yeah.
it's the most beloved perk that we have at Sigma. So if you're thinking about having a dog-friendly office, think about investing in having a dog worker as well. It is definitely, absolutely 100% an investment that will pay you back in employee engagement.
How about the other perks? Like, how do you guys sort of, they cost money, right? They cost resources. Every company has limited resources. Even if you're super well funded, there's some level of ROI you need on these benefits and perks and pay packages. How do you guys think about what you want to provide employees and if it's actually moving the needle for them?
We have a workplace experience team, an amazing team, small but mighty, of Melissa and Chantel. Melissa's in San Francisco and Chantel is in New York. And together they come up with ideas all the time about, here's some ways that we can, again, improve on the employee experience. And we do have conversations about ROI. And as I said, we are very data driven. So we measure the investment in our programs as much as we can. But there is, to be fair, an intangible return on investment. So every so often we'll go out and we'll talk to the team to say, what do you like? What do you not like? What could we do more of? What should we do less of relative to scarce resources? And we get feedback and then we iterate and we improve. So it's a constant process of thinking, is this working? Is this creating the right outcome? And being both quantitative and qualitative in our assessment of those programs. It's important for us because we need to be able to say, yeah, this is something that's working. So as an example, one of the things that we decided, again, very early on in our time back in the office, was that we wanted to, obviously most tech companies in San Francisco or in the Bay Area sponsor a lunch program. And one of the things that we were thinking about is, should we cater in, which was kind of an odd thing back in 2021 because people weren't really doing it. But at the same time, for anyone that's been in the Bay Area, you'll recall that, mid 2021, downtown San Francisco wasn't such a fun place to try and have a local business, particularly in local businesses that were serving lunch. But we were there and we decided that we could, in effect, create a program that served many needs. Firstly, the program that we invested in is that we created agreements with a number of small local restaurants around our office in San Francisco, whereby any of our Sigma employees could go and order their lunch in any of those restaurants. And at the end of the week, those companies or those restaurants would just send their bill to us. And so each day our employees can choose, I'm going to go to Working Girl Cafe or to Cafe Madeline or whatever restaurant that they chose from that group. And we did that for a few reasons. Firstly, we really wanted to support these local businesses. The local businesses are the lifeblood of a downtown, and if we, as larger companies, don't support them, it's a tough place for them to be. But also, we really wanted to have to create opportunities for our employees to leave the building during the day. And in addition to that they would maybe meet other employees of Sigma from other departments when they're waiting for their lunch to be prepared. So that really worked out for us. During the peak hours of 12 until 2, every day. If you walk down in Montgomery Street in particular, you'll see a group of Sigma employees or a group of people, you won't know they're Sigma employees, but they are standing around outside Working Girl waiting for Max to finish making their sandwiches or standing outside Madeline. And, those are groups that are mixed across departments. And that's great because we're always looking for those opportunities to bring people together. we recently added, in addition to that, based on, again, employee feedback. So in addition to that part of the program, we recently added the ability to order your lunch through DoorDash, because some employees were saying, hey, it's great, but I don't always have the 15 minutes to go and wait for my sandwich to be created. So is there another option whereby I can, get that food and either go pick it up or have it delivered if I'm particularly busy? So we added the DoorDash option to the lunch program, continued with the existing program, because we love what it does. We love what it does for those businesses, and we love what it does for our company.
And I imagine people sort of like, hey, I'm going to go get a sandwich. Do you want to come with me? And
Exactly.
then they sort of meet people. And I think what's interesting in how you create these kind of employee, touch points and experiences, I'm curious, like, has there been anything like internally where it's led to like a product sort of improvement or sort of solving a problem that somebody's working on, where it's like, I can't get, the Excels to Excel. Can you help me? Right.
Actually, yes, it has. Now, I'll give you a personal recent example that isn't actually necessarily about the lunch program, because this happened in we have kitchens. We have 6 floors in our building in San Francisco, and we have kitchens on every floor, and those kitchens are stocked with snacks and water and everything that you would expect. And so during and throughout the day, you'll see people going over there to either grab a coffee or grab a snack or grab a water. And a couple of weeks ago, I was one of those people. I was dealing with a particular problem on a workbook, which is a Sigma construct that I was working on our platform. And I just couldn't get something working quite right for me. Oftentimes it's like stand up, walk away, and maybe when you get back, the problem will have somehow miraculously resolved itself. So I decided, okay, you know what, I'm going to go get a coffee. So I did, went over to the kitchen, got a coffee. And as I was there were a couple of people already there. One of them was an engineer, one was a product manager, and we had somebody from the user experience team as well. And as I saw them, I was like, oh, hey, actually, you guys maybe can help me here. So I was explaining what I was trying to do to them. 2 things happened. First of all, they were like, well, if you do it this way, maybe it works. And I was explaining content. I said, not quite what I was looking for, but it's kind of somewhat similar. And to speed the way through a relatively long conversation, what came out of it was, first of all, they helped me navigate the specific issue that I was having in the problem that I was looking to solve. But also, as we went through the conversation, the person that was in the conversation from UX was like, but hey, I see what you're doing. And actually, that's really good feedback from a product perspective. We should maybe change, X, Y, and Z, because you represent the type of user that might do this. So, we should maybe kind of factor in your feedback into what we do. And that sort of stuff happens all the time. That example can be, is a specific one to me, but you could repeat it generically across a huge number of Sigma employees that are constantly iterating and improving upon the product, or solving a problem, that maybe a customer is having during either a sales cycle or post sales. And it's all because we create these opportunities to get together, either over snacks or over lunch or over a happy hour. There's nothing that replaces the value of those kind of spontaneous meetings. So yeah, we do everything we can to try and create situations by which those spontaneous meetings happen.
We actually see kind of the same thing here. We build, some software and tech to help run our operations. And, we kind of like in the engineering and design sort of comes together and we're like, okay, we're happy with this. And then we kind of have someone use it that, really wasn't part of those conversations necessarily. And then it's like, that's how you use it? That's really interesting, right? And they're like, well, this is what I'm trying to do. And we're like, well, you could do it this way. And they're like, that's just not how I think about it. And it's like,
right.
Oh, okay, let's do the part that is how the user actually thinks about it. And we make a ton of things just watching. I know it sounds weird, but just watching people work and being like,
right.
Oh, that's what you're doing? Okay. If that's sort of the path of least resistance, how do we, amplify that and make it easier for people? There's a lot of people out there that are, sort of anti-office, like we want remote distributed teams. It's a big investment in office space and perks and everything else. And we can just do it just as well. And we can recruit and hire from all over the world. So we're going to get the best talent. What's your take on that sort of viewpoint?
I have a fairly simple response to that. You're wrong. And this is, again, I'm speaking both in terms of how we think about it at Sigma Computing, but also my personal belief. It's not to say that you can't, with a distributed workforce, a completely distributed or remote workforce, that you can't get individually better talent. You can, because to your point, if you can hire from anywhere in the world, you can hire rock stars that just happen to live in Ireland, for example. But what you can't do is solve for time zone and distance. So how is the rock star that lives in Ireland going to collaborate in the way that I just described with the rock star that lives in Bogota, Colombia, and somebody else who lives in Seattle and somebody else who lives in San Francisco? They can't. And much and all as we appreciate the value that Zoom and WebEx and Teams and all of the virtual meeting platforms have given to us over the last several years, it just doesn't replace it. So the sum of the parts doesn't become greater than the whole in that scenario. I truly believe that if you get a group of talented people together, the sum of the parts becomes a much better whole because everybody is together. And the ideas and just the way that people spark off each other, particularly people that are, bright and clever and engaged and intelligent, because you might say something and I'll be like, yeah, but, or, we'll have a debate, or it'll be like, I'll build on your point. And that's just really, really hard to do when you're in a virtual meeting. So this is an argument that is asked and answered for me a long time ago. I just don't agree that it's better. I believe strongly in the appeal of having people physically together.
If you ask someone, it's like, tell me a joke. It's like, you can never come up with a joke. But if you're just having a conversation, it's like, oh, that was kind of funny, right? I think the same thing happens in a lot of things. It's like, well, we're going to have a meeting and we're going to be innovative in this meeting, or we're going to be creative in this meeting. It's really, to me, difficult. So how do you sort of ensure kind of, in more of a hybrid, right? That'd be kind of more of a hybrid or typical distributed setting that, your two offices are still able to communicate and sort of get together?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and we spent a lot of time thinking about that when we were opening our office in New York, because I suppose it was there's a couple of risks when you open your second, third, fourth, fifth office. You do it for reasons of either I need more space than I have in my current office, or I'm looking for a low cost location. I want to be able to tap into talent that is in that location, or whatever it is. But if you don't think about, well, what is the purpose of this office, and how does that office work with this office here, you create the risk, and we've seen it time and time again over the course of my career, where you've got these two offices that become culturally very different, not necessarily aligned to the vision or mission of the company, kind of doing their own thing, communications are strained, and that risk is huge. So when we were opening our office in New York, we thought a lot about that. We thought a lot about, what is the purpose of that office? Why are we doing this? How are we going to ensure that the team in New York feel every much as part of the corporate decision-making process as the team in San Francisco do? And some of the things that we did as a result is we decided, because our New York office it is what we call a complete office, in that every function is represented in New York in the same way as it is represented in San Francisco. We thought that was important, that we have engineering support, customer success, etc., in both offices. So that was kind of decision one. This is a complete office. And then within that, we also agreed and decided, well, each team within or function within each office should have a concrete function as well. So, we want full teams in New York, and we want them to be co-located together for all the reasons that I've talked about already, because that just creates additional value. So within each office, you've got a full team. You're not waiting for San Francisco to wake up, for example, before decisions can be made in the main. The last, I suppose, the most fundamental point was we need to make sure that there's opportunities for the office teams to come together. So again, we, much like we said, being in the office is important. It's also important that people from New York come to San Francisco, and from San Francisco go to New York, and that we sort of create those opportunities where people can collaborate together. So last week we had our Innovation Week, which is also our hackathon, and we invited people from New York to come from San Francisco to participate in the hackathon. We put on a series of events, just so much that the particularly our engineering teams had an opportunity to spend time together, to work together on kind of fun projects. Although some of those fun projects are so awesome that they are going to make it into the product because the team
Mhm.
came up with some really creative and cool ideas as to how we could develop and evolve the product during the hackathon. They'll end up in the product, and that has happened every year. So the ROI on that week of having everybody that wants to come together to participate in Innovation Week, it's off the charts. And again, our product gets better as a result. So we're more than happy to support it. But it is really important to be very deliberate, to think about those experiences. I and the rest of the leadership team commit to being in New York once every 6 to 8 weeks, so that we make sure that like corporate headquarter decision making processes happen in both places. And we are now looking for our first office in EMEA. So I'm part of the reason that I'm coming to you from Ireland is that I was earlier this week, I was in London looking at offices there with our head of EMEA team. We found one that we really like, and we will
No?
do exactly the same thing there as we have done in both offices in the US.
Well, congratulations first.
Thank you.
That's awesome to hear. I imagine that's probably pretty fun to be able to travel around to different countries and find different office spaces. That's got to be a nice perk of the job.
It doesn't hurt. That's true.
When you think about like your team and their overall kind of happiness or experience, are there ways that you sort of measure or sort of figure that out?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, probably the fundamental way that we engage just to understand how people are feeling and how they feel about their experience at Sigma is we run formal and informal surveys. Formal surveys, traditional employee engagement surveys, although admittedly we don't do them as often as we should. We look to at least once a year, do an engagement survey with the team to say, what's working, what's not working. And we also run less formal versions of those surveys, on specific topics. So, for example, was discussing with the workplace experience team, Melissa in this case in San Francisco, this week about the location for our upcoming holiday party. And she had two really great locations, one of which was right in the city and one of which was a little further away. The one that was a little further away was admittedly cooler, but it was a little further away. And so I was like, oh, I don't know, if I'm making this decision, I'm probably going for the slightly less cool option that's in the city. I am in my mid 40s and I go out probably once a year. So I'm like, I don't necessarily speak for the rest of the company, and I'm certainly not necessarily of that demographic. So we decided, okay, let's survey, let's put it out to a vote, and we did, and I was overwhelmingly wrong. Overwhelmingly, I mean, almost every single vote came back with, yeah, you know what, we should go to the cooler venue that is slightly further away. So I had to eat humble pie on that one for sure. But again, that's really important because I can't speak to the experience of everyone in the company. So it's really important to ask questions like, what do you want? What kind of works for you? So we try and do that as often as we possibly can about big decisions, either whether it's something as well, I was about to say insignificant, but the venue for a holiday party is not insignificant. It's very significant, but something as small, perhaps, as where will we have our holiday party, up to something as large as how should we evolve our benefits program over the coming year, and what additional health benefits are important to you, and that's something that we also do every year as we think about our open enrollment season. And so employee surveys are obviously the kind of the key touchstone to measuring how well we are doing in the employee experience. We also look at other more quantitative factors like voluntary attrition. How are we doing there? If people are leaving, and that might suggest that there is a problem that we need to address in some way and capacity. So we do exit interviews with everyone that's leaving the company to try and see what we can learn. Fairly typical stuff in that respect. But yeah, those are some of the ways that we look to understand how people are feeling. And truthfully, Sigma, at least I hope this is true when I say it, is a fairly transparent culture. So if people don't like something, I'm going to hear about it, regardless of whether I've sent a survey or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good sign is if you hear about problems before you really have to dig into them.
Right.
Got a question for you. The workplace has changed a lot, over the past, 20 years for sure, but even in the past 5 years since COVID, so your pre-COVID, post-COVID office. What trends are you seeing that employees are, either more interested in sort of benefit wise? What's their relationship with work and how has that changed? I think is probably the question I'm trying to ask very poorly, but that's where I'm going. So help me out here.
So I've been working for a long time. My experience of what it was like when I started working in the mid '90s, very different to the experience that the 22-year-olds will have when they join a company in 2024. But also, I started working in Ireland in the mid '90s, which was a very, very different place to either the Bay Area or New York in 2024. So not sure that I can necessarily say that I can trace a direct line over the course of my career, but what I can say is what I hugely value and appreciate, and whether this is the passage of time or a difference in culture is it's hard for me to know. It's the ability or the willingness for companies to be more inclusive with both information and data. So being more transparent about here's what's happening in the company. Here's where we're going. Here's the feedback that we're getting from customers and investors. What do you think? Do you have ideas? Are there suggestions that you would make as an employee that would either improve our product or improve our outcome potentially as well? That did not exist back when I was starting my career back in, as I said, the mid to late '90s. The workplace has become more inclusive of everyone's thoughts and opinions, and diversity in thoughts and opinions is also something that I feel has changed significantly over the course of my career. In terms of how people engage with work, I really don't think that has changed. When people are energized, engaged, and passionate about the work that they are doing, I think the experience of working life is exactly the same now as it was 20 years ago or even 100 years ago, because there's nothing like being passionate about the work that you do. They say that if you enjoy what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. And I really believe that's true. If you're having fun at work because you're really enjoying the things that you're doing, it never feels like work. It just feels like fun. So I think for us at Sigma, that's really what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are as engaged and as passionate about what they do in the context of Sigma as I am about the context of Sigma. And that as soon as we have that team of people around us, everything becomes, so much more engaging and frankly fun, because we're all rowing in the same direction. We're all going after the same goal and we're having fun while we're doing it.
It reminds me of something that we said, you said in our pre-call with some of the challenges or, so the perceived challenges of recruiting people for a fully in-office role. And you said that top performers like to solve hard problems and work in a challenging environment, and that you guys provide that so you don't have any problems recruiting people. And I think, going to like the work is what matters. The work is really what people gravitate towards. And, we can kind of talk about employee experience and all these things that we do to make work better and more fun and interesting. You have to love what you do. You have to like the job. You have to like the work, because that's 95% of it, right? I think it's something really to keep in mind, as we talk to other leaders. It's at the end of the day, it has to be a good fit for the person and the company and the work that they do. Do you guys have any ways that you kind of identify that in the hiring process of like, who is that person that we're trying to find that's going to be that good culture fit for us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose just to reinforce your point, we really do believe that it is the work that makes a difference. Like, we want to provide the best in-office experience that we can. But if we don't have a good match between a great in-office experience and the work that people are doing, it's not compelling at that point.
Mhm.
It's like, yeah, I've got this great series of benefits. And so it's hard for me to think about leaving because I've got these great benefits, but I'm not mentally stimulated. And so, self-actualization, to kind of quote Seligman, just becomes impossible in
Yeah.
that context. And that just breeds resentment and, all sorts of bad things. And we've seen it. We see that happen over and over again, where companies that are focusing on, let's build the best, most fun office that you can have, but not providing the most compelling work. The people that are staying are the people that are energized and engaged by the in-office experience, and the people that really want to solve challenging problems, they're going to go and find them somewhere else. So we 1000% believe that a great employee experience is to provide challenging opportunities for everyone that works at Sigma, and then surround that with a great employee experience. But to answer your question specifically about how do we identify it, well, two things that we do. First of all, we are super transparent and super clear about who we are in the recruiting process. So we're very upfront about here's the expectation about in office, and that we are in office 4 days a week, and we expect you to be in office 4 days a week. And we appreciate that for some people that doesn't necessarily work. And if you are one of those people, we wish you the best, and good luck with your future endeavors, because we're not going to compromise. This is something that's really, really important to us, and we know that it is really, really important to the growth of the company. So this is who we are. Either you love it or you don't love it, and that's fine. So that's one of the things. But also, we do a lot of work during the recruiting process to, I suppose, test for ability to be challenged, or resilience and grit, and like understanding, how well do you want to focus on solving big problems, solving challenging problems? How well are you going to operate in an environment where, things are pretty freely and candidly discussed? We're a transparent, candid culture. And what I mean by that is pretty direct. I will never not thank someone for an idea. If someone has an idea, I'm always going to say, "Hey, listen, thank you for your idea." But I don't necessarily agree with every idea that is given to me. I'm going to tell you why I don't agree when you give it to me. So thank you, but here's why that won't work, or here's why that's not something that we would do. And we have discussions like that all the time. So we test for that during the interview process as well, because ultimately, not everyone's going to feel entirely comfortable in that. And we don't want to have somebody come to the company and have them, completely feel like this is not what I thought I was getting myself into, because that's a bad experience for them and it's a bad experience for us. So we're very upfront and very transparent as we go through the recruiting process to identify people that we feel like will be a good fit for Sigma, and that we feel like are, going to operate well in our environment that is challenging but also energizing, that is intellectually stimulating but also very candid and direct and transparent. And if you're one of those people, here we are, we want you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes to building trust, and that's probably a theme that we've seen on the show is employers that are transparent and open build a lot of trust with their employees, and ultimately that creates for a better employee experience, because they know they can have that conversation, and they're going to get the truth, right? They're not going to get
right
kind of the run around and like the company feels like the company's hiding something. And ultimately,
right
no amount of perks and benefits and stuff like helps if you don't trust somebody.
Absolutely.
So I think it leads with trust, right?
I couldn't agree more. The one thing that I think it's worth saying, because again, it's one of those things that we do at Sigma that I recommend to others. We have a weekly all hands, which is something that we started at the start of the pandemic, but we continued when we came back to the office. So every Friday, the whole company gets together in both offices, or remotely if you happen to be some of our remote employees. And we just talk about, what's happening during the week, whether it's feature launch or, the latest priorities with respect to the company, or promotions or new hires. We do that each and every week. But once a quarter, one of those all hands is given over to the leadership team presenting our board deck. So we present to our board once a quarter in the same way as every other company does. And then the very next week, we present that exact same deck to the rest of the company, so that we're showing and sharing, look, here's what we told our board, and we're going to tell you the exact same thing, because you're shareholders too. And the board of directors are very important, and they give very important advice, but you're shareholders as well. Each employee is a shareholder. So we want your feedback as much as we want theirs. We do that every quarter, and again, it's something I recommend constantly to other leaders, because the level of understanding that creates across our employee base, and I suppose engagement with the process. It's an intangible benefit, but it's definitely real. Something that we as the leadership team see all the time. The fact that we can that our employees can talk with us about, well, I saw our GRO rate was great again this quarter, and that's great. How do the investors feel about that? And we can talk to them about that, and they have context and they understand. It makes a huge difference. If I'd known what it was like to work for a company where you love the product, that's probably, just core to why I love working at Sigma. I love the product. I love the people. I love the culture, the transparency, the energy, the whole lot of it. So literally feel like the last 4 years have been the most compelling 4 years that I've had in my career. And I've had many years in my career, but the last four has off the charts been the best time that I've had. So if it sounds like that's something that's interesting to people that are listening to this podcast, reach out, talk to us. We are hiring, and we're hiring all the time.
Orla, thank you so much for joining us. Your insight's been awesome. I literally could talk to you for hours. But if people want to get in touch with you, where online should they meet you? If they're interested in Sigma computing, how should they get in touch?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You'll find me at Orla Clifford, or if you want to just send me a direct email, my email address is orla@sigmacomputing.com. So send to either place. I'd love to hear from anyone that's interested in knowing more about the company.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, and really looking forward to seeing Sigma continue to grow.
Thank you very much, Claude. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me and Orla today on Office Libations Unwrapped. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast for future episodes filled with inspiration, ideas, and strategies to optimize your workplace culture. And remember, happy employees make happy customers. Until next time, I'm your host, Claude Burns.